There was a knock on my door at 7:15 in the morning. Not a friendly rap, but a sharp, official-sounding thump, thump, thump. I knew who it was without even looking through the peephole. Only one person in our entire condo building wielded that kind of self-importance before the sun was fully up. I opened the door to find Mr. Robert Sterling, president of the Bayside Vista Homeowners Association, standing there in a freshly pressed polo shirt and pleated khaki shorts. He held a clipboard like it was a scepter. "Jack," he began, no good morning, no preamble. "It has come to my attention that your vehicle in the garage has an expired registration. Per Section 4, subsection B of the community bylaws, this is a violation. The vehicle must be removed from the property within 24 hours. He had a smug little smile, the look of a man who just caught a master criminal. I just looked at him. "You're about 10 minutes too late, Robert," I said. I had, in fact, just walked up from the garage after putting the new sticker on my license plate. "And you have nothing better to do at sunrise than wander a 400-car garage checking for stickers?" His face tightened. "It's my duty to uphold the rules." "Well," I said, leaning against the door frame, "your duty's done. Registration's current." I gave him a flat smile and gently closed the door in his face. I waited, listening. I heard him huff, then the sound of his sensible shoes squeaking away towards the elevator. He was going down to the garage to check. Of course he was. The man just had to be right, and that right there was his biggest weakness.
My name is Jack Riley. I'm 63. For 35 years, I ran my own AC repair business, Riley's Reliable Cooling. In South Florida, that makes you part doctor, part priest. I've seen people at their most desperate, sweating through a July heat wave. I've spent my life in cramped attics and on scorching rooftops, wrestling with compressors and coolant lines. My work truck is my office, my tool shed, and my partner. It's an old Ford E350 van, faded white, with my company name on the side and about 100,000 miles of honest work on the odometer. When my wife Sarah passed a few years back, the old house felt too big, too quiet. So I sold it, bought this condo on the 4th floor. It wasn't fancy, but it had a wide balcony and a clear view of the bay. I figured I'd earned a little peace, a place to drink my morning coffee and watch the boats go by. But I hadn't factored in Robert Sterling. Sterling lived on the 5th floor, directly above me. He was one of those guys who retires from a middle management job and discovers his true calling as a petty tyrant. The HOA was his kingdom, the bylaws his scripture. He walked the property with a notepad, documenting infractions, a towel hanging on the wrong balcony, a potted plant that was 2 inches too tall, a guest parked for 5 minutes in a residence spot. He was a condo commando, a man on a mission to suck the joy out of life, one violation at a time. The registration sticker thing was just his opening shot. The real war was about to begin over my truck.
The condo rules were clear. No commercial vehicles parked on the property overnight. I knew that. It's a standard rule, which is why I never parked my work van in our lot. Right next to our property was a small city park with its own public parking lot. It was separated from our building only by a line of hibiscus bushes. So every evening, I'd park my van there. I was off condo property, following the rules. Or so I thought. A week after the sticker incident, I found a note taped to my door. A crisp, laser-printed memo from the Bayside Vista HOA. It has come to our attention that a commercial vehicle registered to this unit is being parked in the adjacent municipal lot. While technically not on our property, this creates a negative visual impact. It went on like that for 2 paragraphs. All passive-aggressive nonsense. I crumpled it up and threw it away. The next evening, Sterling cornered me in the lobby. "Jack," he said, puffing out his chest, "you got my memo about the truck." "I got it, Robert." "And you chose to ignore it." "It's a city park, Robert. It's public property. You don't control it." "It reflects poorly on our community," he said, his voice rising. "People see that rusty old van and they associate it with our building." That got under my skin. That rusty old van put 2 kids through college and paid for this condo you seem to think you own. I suggest you find a new hobby. That's when he escalated. He started calling the police. The first time, a young, patient officer showed up at the park. I saw the flashing lights from my balcony. I went down. "Sir, we got a complaint about your vehicle being parked here," the officer said. I smiled, reached into my glove box, and pulled out a small, laminated card. "I have a commercial vehicle parking permit, officer, issued by the city. Paid for it last year." The officer looked at the permit, then back at our condo building, where he could probably feel Sterling's eyes boring into him. He sighed. "Sorry to bother you, sir. Have a good night." Sterling called him 3 more times over the next 2 weeks. By the 4th call, the dispatcher just told him, "Sir, we've explained the situation. The vehicle is legally parked. Please do not call this number for this issue again." He had been beaten. He had used every tool in his little rule book and failed. For a normal person, that would be the end of it. But for a man like Sterling, a public defeat was gasoline on the fire. He couldn't force me to move, but I knew, as sure as I was standing there, that he was watching. Every morning, he'd be out on his 5th-floor balcony, drinking his coffee, glaring down at my truck with pure, impotent rage. And that's when the idea came to me. A beautiful, simple, perfect idea. He loved his view. He loved feeling like he was above it all. I decided to give him something special to look at.
The idea didn't come in a flash of anger. It came on a quiet Saturday morning. I was on my own balcony, sipping my coffee, looking down at my van in the lot below. It was parked in the exact same spot it always was. Then I looked up at the balcony directly above mine, Sterling's balcony. The king in his castle, looking down on his subjects. The view, that was his power. He could see everything. He could watch me, judge me from his superior perch. He thought his position on the 5th floor gave him the high ground. I realized I didn't need to fight him on his terms. I just needed to change his view. I drove my van to a sign painter I knew over in Dania Beach, a guy named Marco who still did things by hand with a brush. "Marco," I said, "I've got a strange one for you. I need you to paint something on the roof of my van." He raised an eyebrow. "On the roof? Nobody sees the roof." "Oh," I said with a slow grin. "One person will." I drew it out for him on a piece of paper. I wanted big, bold block letters about 3 feet high, bright white against the faded paint of the roof. I wanted it positioned perfectly so that it would be read from a specific angle, an angle looking down from the north side of a 5-story building. The letters were to spell out, "Below me, Bob." Marco looked at my drawing, then at me, and a huge grin spread across his face. "Is this Bob a friend of yours?" I said, "He's the president of my HOA."
Marco laughed out loud. "This is going to cost you extra for artistic satisfaction." We made one small addition. Underneath the giant letters, in tiny, almost unreadable 2-inch script, I had him paint the name of a fictional company I'd invented on the spot. Building Operations and Maintenance Bureau. BOB. Plausible deniability. It was the masterstroke. It was a weapon Sterling couldn't fight, because if he complained about it, he'd have to admit the message was for him. He'd have to explain the insult, and in doing so, look like a raving lunatic. I paid him in cash, and he promised to have it done by Monday morning.
That Monday morning was one of the most satisfying of my life. I picked up the van before sunrise. The paint was perfect, bold, clean, and screamingly obvious if you knew what to look for. I drove to the city park and, with meticulous care, parked the van. I got out and backed up, looking up at the 5th floor, adjusting the angle until it was just right. Perfect. From Sterling's balcony, it would be the first thing he saw when he looked down. I went up to my apartment, made a fresh pot of coffee, and sat on my balcony. I waited. At 7:05 a.m., like clockwork, Sterling's sliding glass door opened. He stepped out onto his balcony, coffee mug in hand. I couldn't see his face clearly, but I could see his posture. He took a sip of coffee, surveyed his kingdom, and then he froze. He leaned forward, gripping the railing. He stood there motionless for a full minute. I could practically feel the rage radiating down from the 5th floor. He spun around and went back inside, slamming his door shut. 10 minutes later, he was marching across the lobby to the building manager's office. I took the elevator down, pretending I was going to get my mail. I lingered by the mailboxes, close enough to hear. A flagrant and targeted insult. Sterling was sputtering, his voice tight with fury. "Robert, what are you talking about?" said Dave, the building manager, a patient man who had heard it all. "Riley, his truck. He painted an offensive message on the roof." "On the roof? And what does it say?" It says, "Below me, Bob." Dave was silent for a beat. "And? Your name is Robert." "But he calls me Bob. Everyone calls me Bob. It's clearly directed at me." "Robert, he's not on our property. And even if it were, I can't police what people paint on their own vehicles unless it's profane." "Is Bob a profane word?" Sterling stormed out of the office, his face the color of a ripe tomato. He saw me by the mailboxes. I just gave him a pleasant, innocent smile and a little nod. "Morning, Robert." He didn't even speak. He just made a sound like a deflating tire and stalked off toward the elevator. The revenge wasn't loud. It wasn't a confrontation. It was quiet. It was permanent. Every single morning for the rest of his time in that condo, Robert Sterling would wake up, walk out onto his balcony for his morning dose of superiority, and be greeted by a 3-foot-high reminder of his spectacular defeat, courtesy of the man on the floor below.
The change was gradual, but profound. Sterling stopped his patrols. The nasty memos ceased. He was no longer a presence at the pool, peering over his sunglasses for infractions. About 2 months after what I privately called the rooftop revelation, a notice went up on the community board. Robert Sterling was stepping down as HOA president, citing a desire to spend more time on his hobbies. The building seemed to breathe a collective sigh of relief. A nice woman from the 2nd floor took over, and her first act was to declare that the rule about potted plant height was just plain silly. I saw Sterling in the elevator a few times after that. He looked smaller somehow, defeated. He never looked me in the eye. He'd just stare at the floor indicator until his floor arrived. I never gloated. I never said a word. I didn't have to. The van and the park said it all for me every single day. His for sale sign went up about 6 months later. I heard he moved to a single-family home somewhere inland, a place with no shared walls, no common areas, and most importantly, no one living below him. My van is still parked in that same spot. The paint is a little faded now, but the message is still there. A silent monument to the fact that sometimes the best way to deal with a man who thinks he's above everyone else is to give him a message from below.
Sitting on my balcony now, things are quiet. The only person policing the property is the security guard we actually pay for. People smile at each other in the hallway. It's peaceful. I looked down at my old van. It wasn't about the parking spot or the sticker or even the truck. It was about a man's home. It was about defending the little patch of peace you've carved out for yourself. Some people think power comes from a title on a business card or a position on an HOA board. They build their little kingdoms of rules and regulations because it makes them feel big. But that kind of power, it's hollow. It's brittle. It can be shattered by something as simple as a can of paint and a little bit of nerve. True strength isn't about looking down on people. It's about knowing your own worth. It's about patience. And it's about understanding the right tool for the job. Most of my life, my tools were wrenches and gauges. But for this particular job, the right tool was perspective. I just gave him a new one. And from where I'm sitting, the view's better than ever.
Like and subscribe.